Imagine walking through the Florida Everglades at sunset. The air is heavy, the water is still, and somewhere beneath the tall grass, a giant snake silently waits. For years, headlines have warned Americans about massive Burmese pythons taking over South Florida. Social media is filled with stories of giant snakes swallowing deer, battling alligators, and growing longer than a school bus. But here's the question that millions of people have asked. How many people have actually been killed by Burmese pythons in Florida? The answer may surprise you. When most Americans hear the word python, they immediately think of danger. It's easy to understand why. The Burmese python is one of the largest snakes on Earth. Some individuals found in Florida have measured more than 18 feet long and weighed over 200 pounds. These giant reptiles have become famous for spreading throughout the Everglades, one of America's most unique ecosystems. As their population grew, so did public concern. News reports showed giant pythons being captured. Hunters shared dramatic stories. Wildlife experts warned about ecological damage. Soon, many people began wondering if Florida was becoming the setting of a real-life monster movie.
The story begins decades ago. During the exotic pet boom of the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, Burmese pythons became popular pets across the United States. Cute baby snakes were easy to buy, but there was one problem. Those tiny snakes didn't stay tiny. Many grew into massive reptiles that were difficult and expensive to care for. Over time, some escaped. Others were released into the wild. Then, Hurricane Andrew struck South Florida in 1992, damaging facilities and contributing to the spread of exotic animals. The warm climate of South Florida allowed pythons to survive and reproduce, and the population exploded. Now, let's answer the question. How many people have been killed by Burmese pythons in Florida? Despite decades of python headlines, thousands of captured snakes, and a growing population in the Everglades, there are no confirmed cases of wild Burmese pythons killing people in Florida. That's right. The giant snakes that dominate headlines have caused enormous environmental problems, but documented human fatalities from wild Burmese pythons in Florida have not occurred. For many viewers, this comes as a huge surprise, because the public image of these snakes is often far more frightening than the reality.
If people aren't the primary victims, what is? Florida's wildlife. Researchers have documented dramatic declines in some native mammal populations in areas where pythons became established. Animals such as raccoons, rabbits, opossums, foxes have faced increased pressure from these invasive predators. The Everglades evolved without giant pythons. As a result, many native species never developed defenses against them. This is why wildlife officials consider pythons a serious environmental threat. The biggest battle isn't between pythons and people, it's between pythons and Florida's ecosystem. Part of the reason Americans fear Burmese pythons is because of incredible real-life encounters. Hunters have discovered giant snakes with deer inside their stomachs. Wildlife officers have removed enormous females carrying dozens of eggs. There have even been documented fights between pythons and alligators. These stories sound like scenes from a Hollywood movie, and when photos spread online, millions of people instantly click. The combination of mystery, danger, and giant predators creates powerful emotions. That's why python stories consistently go viral. Yes, but it's important to understand the difference between danger and documented fatalities. A large python is a powerful animal. If cornered, handled improperly, or provoked, it can bite and defend itself. Large constrictors also possess tremendous strength. That's why wildlife experts and trained handlers approach them carefully. However, wild Burmese pythons generally avoid humans. People are much larger than their typical prey. In most encounters, the snake's first instinct is not to attack, it is to escape. that doesn't mean people should approach them. It means the reality is more complex than the fear. For Florida residents, this issue feels personal. Many families live near canals, wetlands, and natural areas. Parents worry when their children play outdoors. Pet owners wonder about the wildlife in their neighborhoods. When people hear about giant snakes in the Everglades, it's natural to feel concerned. But understanding the facts is important. Fear alone doesn't solve problems. Knowledge does. The real challenge facing Florida isn't surviving attacks from giant snakes. It's protecting one of America's most valuable ecosystems from an invasive predator.
The Burmese python invasion is about more than snakes. It's a story about human decisions, exotic pet ownership, conservation, wildlife management, protecting native ecosystems. The Everglades is one of the most remarkable places in America. What happens there affects countless species and future generations. That's why scientists, hunters, and conservationists continue working to control invasive python populations. So, how many people have been killed by Burmese pythons in Florida? Despite their enormous size and terrifying reputation, there are no confirmed fatalities from wild Burmese pythons in Florida. But don't let that answer fool you. The real story isn't about human victims. It's about an ecosystem fighting to survive. Deep in the waters and grasslands of the Everglades, the battle continues every day. And as Florida works to protect its wildlife, one thing is certain. The Burmese python remains one of the most fascinating and controversial animals in America. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe and tell us in the comments, should Florida do more to control invasive pythons?